story begins as we see a professor hard at work when he is visited by a representative from a pharmaceutical company. The man points out how the professor seems to be overworking himself, but it is undeniable that his research is world-class, and many patients will be saved thanks to him developing new medicine. Professor, when he has a memory of his young sister, he had to watch as the doctors gave up on her after determining her illness was incurable. Since then, the professor has dedicated his entire life to inventing new medicines, hardly allowing himself to sleep, and relying heavily on snacks and energy drinks to keep himself going. After finishing up some work, the professor would write a note on his wrist and allow himself a 45-minute rest. It has been a while since he actually interacted with a patient, and dreams of the day he might be able to become a town pharmacist. However, his assistant would return the next day to find that he had passed away. The professor would then wake up to find a girl by his side who explains that he had been struck by lightning. The professor instantly notices his voice has changed, and his heart begins to race as he begins to realize what has happened. The girl would then reveal that his name is actually Falma de Médicis. Falma doesn't remember too much, but realizes that he must have passed on from his previous life due to overworking himself. The girl introduces herself as Charlotte and notices strange markings on Falma's body. She believes it to be a holy mark, but he explains that it must just be a burn from the lightning. Charlotte is confident, though, that it must have been Panactios, the god of medicine, protecting him. She is concerned to see that he has forgotten basic knowledge of the world, and agrees to help him remember. Falma is a member of the great Médicis family that is filled with royal pharmacists. His father Bruno is a man of outstanding skill and serves as the president of the Imperial School of Pharmacy. Falma's mother is named Beatrice, and his sister is Blanche. He also has an older brother named Paul, but he is currently studying abroad at the most prestigious school of medicine in the world. Charlotte then explains the divine arts, which are feats that are believed to be works of the gods. It's pretty much just magic, and Charlotte becomes worried when it seems like Falma has forgotten all about it. The ability to use divine arts is the mark of nobility, and if he isn't able to remember how to do it, she fears he will no longer be recognized as a noble and be driven out of the estate. Later, Falma remembers how she had told him that he is able to use the divine art of water and must create a mental image of the form of water to use it. He gives it a try by imagining water's molecular structure and finds that his markings begin to glow. Falma panics as water begins to flow uncontrollably from his hands and aims it outside. After begging for it to stop, it finally does, and he sees that Charlotte was soaked by it. She is glad to see that he remembers how to use the divine arts and doesn't mind getting wet, since he watered the garden for her. Falma is surprised at how easy that was and decides to try making other things. He finds that he is able to produce simple substances and compounds like gold and sodium chloride, but not mixtures. His left hand has the ability to create substances while his right eliminates them. Charlotte arrives to celebrate, but realizes that he must have forgotten all his medicinal knowledge as well. This is especially concerning, since his father often springs surprise quizzes on medicine during meals. Charlotte brings him to their library and explains that he receives special education in pharmacology from childhood. Falma is then surprised to find that he is able to understand and remember everything from the teachings. He then joins his family for dinner as they all express relief to see that he has recovered. Falma can't help but be sympathetic, knowing that this family had lost a real son, and decides he must live on as Falma for everyone's sake. As predicted, Bruno tested his knowledge of the medicine used to help him recover, and Falma passes easily. His father is pleased and instructs him to resume his lessons. The next day when he does, Falma meets his tutor Eleanor, who notices something is off. He is not calm or charming like he usually is, but she backs off when Falma says his memory is just fuzzy since being hit by lightning. That being the case, she decides they will review the basics of divine arts. Those with the aptitude for divine arts each have a guardian deity. For him and his father, that is Panactios, but for her it is Hydrotheus. There are 5 attributes of divine arts, which are fire, water, air, earth, and none. There are also positive and negative attributes for each. Falma wonders about the none attribute, but not much is known about it, and it hasn't been seen in 300 years. He then wonders what someone with the ability to create any substance would be, and she simply says it's impossible. Anyone like that would be considered a god or a demon. Afterwards, Eleanor can't believe that Falma forgot to bring his divine wand that is used to amplify and control the arts, so she allows him to borrow hers. She wants him to launch a spear of water, but he doesn't remember how, so she gives him a demonstration. After that, she reminds him to say the incantation out loud, and Falma prepares to make his first attempt. To their surprise, Falma manages to unleash his extremely powerful burst of water that sends Eleanor flying and leaves them both in shock. She can't comprehend how he was able to use such power even without an incantation. She becomes concerned when she explains that the total divine power a person can use in their life is fixed, and he may have just used all of his. She uses a meter to test how much he has left, but becomes terrified when it breaks. Eleanor explains that it was a colorless capacity break, and showed both positive and negative attributes. She can't even explain exactly what it means, since no one has exceeded the meter before. Falma tries to explain that the marking on his arms are just burns, but she realizes that they are actually holy markings of Panactios. She explains that he can never grasp another meter again, and needs to keep it all a secret from everyone. Afterwards, Falma helps guide her as she lost her glasses, and notices she is trembling, but she blames it on her lack of vision. He would then teach her a trick to help with her vision, to find that he is able to detect that she has sprained finger. Falma notices that medical issues glow blue, and when he identifies the cause, the color changes to white. She is once again surprised and explains that Panactios perceives all illness and grants medicine. Falma seems to possess Panactios' divine eye, and Eleanor is petrified now, since that power is not human. What is even more horrifying though is that she notices he has no shadow. This sends her over the edge as she promises not to tell anyone, and she runs for her life. Next morning at tutor. Hearing this, Eleanor was surprised and said that he did not need to study sacred techniques, and explained that in the Médicis family library, there was nothing about sacred techniques, so he wanted to be guided by Eleanor because he didn't know how to control his powers. The next day, Eleanor, who returned to teach Falma, seemed to have recovered and returned to be healthy. Before starting her class, Eleanor thanked him because the ointment and bitter medicine from him were very effective in treating her illness. She was frank and admitted that Bruno's medicine was not effective. After that, she invites Falma to go to an uninhabited island because she has to be on guard if his powers cannot be controlled. Arriving on the island, the training began, and Eleanor continued practicing until Falma could perfectly master his certain disease. Falma muttered that his existence in this world was an oddity. Besides having no shadow, he has special powers that make him a target for kidnapping or assassination. After seeing all his maid's ailments, Falma began to concoct medicine. Falma looked saddened at the thought that social level influenced a person's medicine intake. Even with the knowledge that is still limited, he was determined to give medicine to everyone in need. A few days later, Falma, after explaining to his family, Bruno took his leave due to an emergency call, even though he appeared to be coughing and feeling unwell. Soon after, Falma prepared a medicine for his younger sister, and he secretly entered Blanche's room and checked on her condition. He tries to persuade her by mixing his bitter medicine with the macaroon so that she will eat the medicine. Blanche, surprised because her older brother had brought her medicine, said that Bruno had told her that there was no cure for her illness. Hearing that, Falma looked shocked. And then he reasoned that the drug was in the newest book, and because they were busy, maybe their father didn't have time to read it. Because of this, Falma asked Blanche to keep the drug secret. And is scratched. Blanche wondered whether the virus was because people were unfamiliar with the concept of viruses or bacteria in her world. Falma explained that the virus is a kind of invisible little evil spirit. Blanche frankly said that her older brother had changed from before. Strength of his right hand. Even though it was impossible to see a virus that was so small, he could show Blanche bacteria with it. When Falma was about to meet Blanche to show the device, her father suddenly called and told him to get ready to leave because there was an emergency call from the imperial palace informing him of the queen's sudden deteriorating health condition. Falma is concerned about Bruno's cough, but is interrupted before he can analyze it. They arrive to find that Empress Elizabeth is in critical condition. Falma assists his father as he attempts to determine her ailment, and is amazed at how different the procedure is compared to his world. Falma is later surprised to overhear them say that destiny is near its end, because the stars are in horrible state. Bruno will still continue to treat her the best he can, but Falma is able to smell the ingredients he is using to determine he has created an anesthesia potion. Elizabeth wants him to be honest and tell her if she is beyond saving, but he says that is not the case. He states that the medicine he has made is powerful enough to help, but Falma knows it isn't. It's clear that Bruno is just trying to lessen her suffering, and others call to have a priest come the next day. Falma is shocked to see that everyone has given up, and decides that he can no longer just stand by. He uses his divine eye to find that she has lung cancer, bronchitis, and tuberculosis. The solution will not be simple, and he is limited by the equipment available in this world. Time is running out, and he realizes that he will only have one chance to help her. The pressure builds, and Falma finally gets to feel what it's like to deal directly with the patient. Just then the Empress' son rushes in and is distraught to find his mother in such terrible condition. Falma decides it's finally time to act. He requests permission to treat Elizabeth, and reveals that there is a new medicine for her illness. Bruno thinks he is playing a cruel trick, but the Empress wants to hear him out. Falma explains that he thinks he has determined what her illness is, and she decides to trust him. She must tell everyone else to stay silent, as it seems that the young Falma is the only one that has not given up. Elizabeth then gives him permission, and Falma gets to work. He barricades himself inside a room to avoid interruption, and formulates a treatment. Falma determines that he must use 4 different drugs in order to prevent the bacteria from becoming resistant. However, he is interrupted by his father, who reveals that he was able to determine her illness is the White Death, but no one in the wood can cure it. Falma is again amazed by Bruno as he was able to diagnose her without any special abilities like his. Bruno expresses his displeasure since he believes that Falma is only giving the Empress false hope. However, Falma explains that the medicine he speaks of is real and that he will have to take it as well. Falma continues his work, but is once again interrupted. Bruno wants to know what he is planning, and Falma tries to calm him down, but it's too late. After a brief exchange of divine arts, Bruno is shocked at how Falma didn't use an incantation, and begins to wonder who this boy really is. Bruno finds Falma's journal and he explains that there are new medicine in there, that he dreamed of the day he was struck by lightning. Bruno notices the holy marks on his arm, and is amazed to see that Panactios has granted his son a great blessing. Falma begs that he give the medicine to the Empress and takes the credit for himself. However, Bruno declines, explaining that the medicine Falma has made is his to give. Furthermore, the Empress has staked her life on Falma's medicine, and in turn Falma mistake his life in giving it to her. Falma understands and removes the ice he created. Bruno is shocked to see this, as Falma's attribute is positive water. This means that he has always been able to produce it, but should not be able to erase it. He once again questions if he is really his son, and Falma simply replies that he considers himself to be. Falma then arrives to administer the treatment, and the head physician questions if Bruno should stop his son. However, he reveals that he won't since Falma's skills may have already surpassed theirs. Before Falma begins, he has her look through his microscope to see what she thinks are strange creatures, as everyone else looks. Falma explains that they are extremely small organisms that cause a white death called bacteria. They can cause several diseases, including the one affecting her body. However, if the medicine he is giving her is taken properly for half a year, a full recovery can be expected. This information changes everything. They know about disease. She accepts his treatment, and Falma formally stakes his life on it by drinking it himself. He announces to everyone that once the medicine proves to be successful, the disease will have a cure and they will no longer need to fear the White Death. On their way home, Bruno thinks about how he has focused so much on his patients and neglected his own son. However, despite that, he can tell the boy before him is not the Falma he knew. When they arrived, Falma expresses relief that the Empress had managed to fall asleep, and asked if his father would be willing to take the medicine. Bruno acknowledges that Panactios has blessed Falma, and concedes that he himself has a lot to learn. Falma explains that he is mistaken, though he may have had the knowledge required to create the medicine, but he didn't understand the needs of a patient on the verge of death. That is something he learned from Bruno. Falma explains that his acumen is shallow and unrefined. He acknowledges that his father excels in these aspects, and asks that they pursue the path of medicine together. His father agrees and gives thanks to his son, as they are welcomed by the rest of their family. 3 months after the palace summons, Bruno told Falma that a representative from Novarut Medical University had come to their house and asked the Médicis family to publish the prescription for the White Death medicine that he had found. Bruno then made excuses for the representatives from the university to go home, because he was sure that the drug was a miracle from Panactios, so that it didn't need to be taught to other people. However, Falma turned out to have a different opinion. He would publish the method of manufacture. His father was surprised to hear that. Falma said valuable knowledge must be shared with everyone. That way, he is sure that new discoveries will emerge in the pharmaceutical and medical fields that can benefit everyone. Furthermore, Falma explained that it was just his principle as a pharmacist, and he did not deny that everyone has different principles. Bruno explains that he got information about people who wanted to replace the queen's position in the empire, so they devised a plan by spreading the disease in the palace. However, Falma wasn't sure about that because the chance of the disease developing was only 10%. Women invited him to follow him for a while. In an alley in the palace, in a whisper, Prince Noah informs that the queen has prepared a gift for Falma soon. Prince Noah again asks what gift for Falma wants. Innocently, he simply replied that he didn't want anything. In the queen's room, after her routine of taking medicine from Falma, she praised his new medicine, which was efficacious because her condition was getting better. Of pharmacists, Bruno received an area called Marseille as a reward for his services to the empire. The queen advised Bruno to continue his research in the pharmaceutical field. Falma, who has not yet decided on the design and concept of the pharmacy he wants to establish in parallel world instead. Craftsman heard Falma's mumbling and thought he had named it Parallel World Pharmacy, so he called a sign maker to imprint the name. A few days later, when Eleanor came to see the pharmacy, which now has a sign in front of it, she praised Falma on behalf of the pharmacy. However, he denied it and said that the name resulted from a misunderstanding. Eleanor calmed down and said that if the name of the pharmacy caught people's attention, Falma politely introduced himself as the royal pharmacist and came from the Médicis family. Then Veron satirized him by saying that the pharmacy could only sell candy because he was still very young. Eleanor, who heard Veron's words, looked very annoyed and seemed ready to fight. Seeing his teacher's attitude, Falma tried to calm Eleanor and smiled at Veron while answering if he would sell throat tablets with a substance similar to candy. Falma, who knows that Veron doesn't like the building of his pharmacy, asks if he should join the guild if he wants to open a pharmacy. Veron replied that the guild. Hearing that, Bruno agreed to his son's request and called Simon to bring a gift to Falma, which turned out to be a chest of gold as initial capital for building his own pharmacy. Falma would open his pharmacy day later, and onlookers assumed that he is just playing shop with his parents' money. Falma would prove how serious he is, though when he gives a speech, it is about his commitment to providing affordable medicine to every person in the community. A month passes and farmer commoners and nobles just have their medicinal needs brought to them. Falma just wants to help those that need it the most. And Charlotte arrives with the results of a survey she conducted all on her own. Her survey reveals that the people in the town are intimidated by the seal outside the pharmacy. Furthermore, they fear that they may be punished for not knowing how to properly speak to a noble like Falma. They also fear the guards outside and question whether their clothing will be appropriate for a noble's pharmacy. Falma decided to have the prices be negotiable, but the survey reveals that it made people think the prices would be too high. The group decide to make some changes, including Falma would spot him outside speaking to a group of men, but be interrupted by masked customers. Falma realizes that they are his parents instantly though, and they explain they wanted to visit without interrupting business. Falma gives a tour where he shows that the first floor is the main store, the second is for medical care and patient rest, the third floor is the break room for employees, and the fourth is a research that purely for him to develop medicine. Falma explains that most of their customers comfortable there is their main issue. His mother comes up with the idea to sell cosmetics to the rich. Once it becomes popular, commoners will look to buy them as well if they are cheap enough. Use it, tend to have a shorter lifespan. Falma is once again amazed at how his father was able to conclude this just with observation. Bruno points out how some women are even resorting to having blood drawn to achieve pale skin, and compliments his wife on being beautiful the way she is. Just then Falma's assistance is urgently requested, and he arrives to find a very pale woman. Inspection using his divine eye reveals self-harm. The incisions were too precise though, and he determines that it was actually the procedure. His father spoke of the girl as treated at the pharmacy, and reveals that she had been rejected by someone that prefers women with pale skin. She is persistent about having pale skin, and Falma warns her of the dangers of continued use of the procedure. Falma explains though that his is made of all safe ingredients unlike other cosmetics. Eleanor explains that the other should be banned for being so harmful, and Falma plans to bring it up to the Empress. Chloe returns and is shocked to see that he has chosen to replace the white powder with a cream. It comes with several other benefits and will block the sunlight from tanning her skin. His skincare line also comes with moisturizers and makeup remover among other things. Chloe is extremely impressed and grateful for him finding a safe way to achieve the look she is going for. Chloe is actually the daughter of a famous entrepreneur, and her influence helps them spread the word of their cosmetics. The group offer free samples while explaining the immense benefits compared to traditional cosmetics. The people of the town are very impressed that high-quality products used. People flock to the pharmacy for the cosmetics. The immense traffic has also led people to realize how affordable the medicine and treatment is there. Word of mouth spreads even more, and business being to boom. Unfortunately, production can't keep up with the sudden demand, and Falma's employees are becoming overwhelmed by all the customers. Chloe comes up with an idea for becoming business partners, where her family will open a subsidiary for Falma's cosmetics. Cedric believes it's a good idea, and Falma decides to do it. He realizes how much damage he is giving the wealthy people and the nobles just because he wants to favor the poor. That said, Falma happily agreed with the advice of the Empress. One day, the Médicis family way to the Empire. This place is the largest producer of herbal plants, which is very important for a pharmacist. Bruno and his men are currently discussing trade accounting reports for the last 5 years. One of his men told him about a North Idon company from the Netherlands kingdom that was cheating to avoid collecting taxes. Hearing the report, Bruno instructed his subordinates to discuss it with the company so that shipping rates were lowered and goods could be delivered more easily. While the meeting was still going on, Falma suddenly entered the meeting room to meet his father. His father's assistant, who saw him, suggested he visit the famous Marseille beach. However, she found the courage to ask Falma about the incident on the beach. Falma then said he wanted Charlotte not to be afraid of him after seeing his holy technique. He apparently saw a very scared Charlotte on the beach after she saw his strength. Charlotte, who felt guilty, apologized and said that his holy technique was extraordinary and bravely helped Blanche, even though she should be helping Blanche, not him. However, Falma justified Charlotte's actions because he knew Charlotte could not swim. He said he was happy that Charlotte was staying on the beach and not endangering herself, even though Blanche. Shortly after, he saw two men who looked suspicious, and when he approached them, they just walked away. Falma then discussed the two suspicious men with Eleanor and the others. She thought that the two mysterious men might be interested in Falma, while explaining that the white robes the two mysterious men were wearing looked different from the guilds in town. Eleanor added that they looked like priests from a church outside the empire. After that, Falma and the others discussed it with the guards so they would be more alert, so nothing happened to the customers. The guard rushed to report this to Bruno, who became furious that a group of people was trying to disrupt his son's business. Not only that, this can endanger the safety of his family and those around the pharmacy. Bruno intends to report the incident to the queen because he has a hunch that they not only intend to destroy Falma's pharmacy, but harm his youngest son. Bruno then asked Falma if he suspected anyone because the attack was a declaration of war on the Médicis family. Actually, Falma thought of Veron, the chief apothecary, as well as the white-robed people who had come to the pharmacy a few days ago. However, Falma did not tell this to his father because making accusations without evidence is not good. He replied that he would find out. His father advised Falma to stay alert because their enemies would not hesitate to use various methods to destroy the Médicis family of men wearing white robes led by Solomon. He realized that Solomon and his men may have ordered the woman to frame him. Solomon then asks about Falma's identity, while confirming that Falma is the boy his subordinates mentioned a while ago, and informs him that he and his group are the inquisitors of the diocese of Diagnose, the leading religious order of the San Fleuve Empire. Falma then remembered and ordered his men to form a magic seal Falma could easily break. Falma then tries to convince Solomon and his group that he is not an evil spirit, but they still attack him in every way possible. But he easily fended off all of their attacks. At first, to the incident, Solomon's upper shins cracked and oozed blood from being hit when he fell from a horse. Seeing that Solomon's injuries were quite severe, then he injected anesthetic into the back, cleaned the wound, and cut out the tissue that was no longer working. After that, Falma stitched up the wound and covered it with a bandage. Falma asked Solomon and his group to keep everything a secret because he didn't want to cause a stir. Then they agreed to keep it a secret, thank Falma for not punishing them, and save him. Falma then said they didn't need to think about that because as someone who studied pharmacy and medicine, it was normal that he saved many people's lives. A few months later, Eleanor tells Falma that a newly appointed head pastor came to the pharmacy, and it turned out to be Solomon, who wanted to thank Falma and give him a present. Solomon then told Falma that he had sent a report to the leadership of the diocese of Diagnose that there was no sign of straying in San Fleuve and that there had never been a boy without a shadow. On the other hand, it turns out that the perpetrator who crashed the horse-drawn carriage into the pharmacy is still a mystery because Solomon never asked anyone to do this. Before Solomon could take his leave, he handed Falma another round shape. Solomon disorder, so that, because he had always wanted to walk with his little sister and Charlotte during the day, while Falma is waiting for his younger sister and Charlotte to finish shopping. Hearing this, Falma told Eleanor that he wanted to form a pharmacist guild, so that commoners' pharmacies could sell their pharmacy's newly concocted medicine. Eleanor answered that currently, the parallel world pharmacy already has a subsidiary, namely Médicis, which means that he has met the requirements for forming a pharmacist union under regulations. Once the guild is formed, other pharmacies can later join their guild and sell the medicines they concoct. Eleanor hopes that the pharmacist union documents that Falma will submit can be approved so that visitors at the parallel world pharmacy can be reduced and the workload of the employees will be lighter. However, that time earlier, the only existing guild in the capital is having a general meeting, and Veron talks about how parallel world pharmacy ruins their business. They talk about how cheap and effective Falma's medicines are, but Veron claims that they have hidden agendas behind them. Veron cannot stand the idea that the parallel world pharmacy is supported by the Archduke and the Empress. It is then revealed that Veron is the person behind the carriage incident. Veron then forbids all guild members from having contact with parallel world pharmacy. He even threatens them that whoever goes against his orders will be removed from the guild, and he will also remove their business permits. Hearing all those things, they cannot do anything but reluctantly agree to everything he says. Back at the present time, Pierre brings his dog there to the nearest clinic, but unfortunately it is closed. Falma saw him and he asked him if his dog there suddenly fell ill. Pierre is aware that Veron's eyes are everywhere, so he is hesitant to talk to Falma. However, Pierre no longer cares about Veron's anger at that moment, because all he wants is to have her dog there healed from her illness. That said, he agreed to get some help from Falma himself. So Charlotte immediately returned to the pharmacy to prepare the clinic. Along the way, Pierre saw the long queue of people outside the parallel world pharmacy. Then he followed Falma, who passed through the back gate. This, however, made Pierre feel sad, because he thought that people of poor and low social standing were treated that way. Upon entering, Pierre is dumbfounded by what he saw. He has never seen a pharmacy that is as advanced as Falma's. Soon after, Falma asks him to lay her daughter on the bed and wear a mask. At that moment, Pierre realizes that he's wrong about him having some prejudice with poor people. It turns out that Falma only used the back door to avoid spreading the illness of her daughter. Moments later, Falma starts his diagnosis interview, and he proceeds with the standard checkup protocols. He even asks Marie's weight to know the right dosage that he will prescribe her. Lastly, Falma uses his divine eye to confirm his diagnosis, and just like that, Falma successfully diagnoses that his daughter has a severe cold. Pierre could not believe that it was just a severe cold, so Falma explained that it was due to a virus called influenza. Once again, Falma forgets that he is no longer in his previous world, and he keeps on talking about some virus stuff that no one understands. However, when he saw that the two got scared of him, he tried to play it cool and explained it using simple words. Then he administered the right medicine for Marie. When night arrives, Pierre returns home along with her daughter. Pierre can't help but feel insecure at how big the difference is between Falma's skills and his. Seeing him feeling down, his wife tries her best to comfort him, but the two of them end up crying. The next day, another meeting at the guild was held. Veron lashes out his anger about the way the nobles and aristocrats treat commoners as livestock for tax revenues. On the other hand, Pierre chooses to stand for the truth, which triggers the anger of Veron. Later that day, Pierre is seen crying outside his pharmacy. Falma then noticed the destroyed pharmacy and felt extremely bad about it. Not long after, he saw the devastated Pierre, so he approached him to ask him what exactly happened to him. Falma immediately realizes that Pierre is a pharmacist like him. With so much sadness, Pierre explains to him that after he told the guild the truth about Falma's pharmacy, they took all of his merchandise and his business permit. Hearing that, Falma felt extremely sorry for him. He even revealed that with his business being banned at the guild, he can no longer do any business. Pierre even added that the only choice for him is to migrate to another country and start from scratch, because he cannot give up being a pharmacist. Falma then asks him if he can do business again if he will join another guild. Pierre confirms it, and Falma revealed that he had just recently received an order from the Empress allowing him to build and establish his own guild. And just like that, Falma offers another chance for Pierre to do what he loves, making him cry like a baby. Later on, his most awaited day arrives, and he cannot believe his eyes. After seeing a huge crowd waiting for the reopening of his shop with tears of joy, Pierre welcomes them to his shop. The scene then switches to the past, which shows a genius man named Camus under. In the present, Bruno opened his eyes and realized it was a dream. After breakfast, Falma saw something different about his father and asked about his condition. Briefly, Bruno replied that he was fine and was just thinking of something. Moments later, Simon arrives with a letter from Pal. Knowing it was a letter from her eldest son, Beatrice was enthusiastic and thought Pal would be home soon. However, the letter's contents apparently reported that he had decided to postpone his return. Then Blanche asked if her eldest brother was very busy. Falma, who heard his younger sister's question, replied that Pal might be busy studying to finish college. Bruno then asks Falma to come into his room, where he tells Falma that next month there will be San Fleuve's Fair, the biggest trading event which will be held once a year for 1 month, and merchants from all over the world will gather in the imperial capital. Because of that, he reminded Falma to be more careful about a strange epidemic troubling Pant Island, a neighboring colony of the Netherlands. Based on a letter from Pal, at least 1,000 people have died from this deadly disease. Hearing that, Falma was surprised and asked if it was endemic disease or maybe it came from poison. Unfortunately, Bruno himself did not know the details. The best research team from the Novarud Academy had brought their samples for study. Bruno again explained that the epidemic would only end after all the colonies died. However, there will be a Dutch merchant ship carrying goods from the island for the fair later, which means there is likely to be contaminated cargo coming to the imperial capital. Informed him that the sacred fire technique had destroyed all the bodies and samples. All samples of his corpse had turned to ashes and left nothing. Falma thinks that virus. Meanwhile, in the palace, it appeared that a minister reported to the queen about the reduction in the death rate due to disease in the imperial capital by 20%. This is thanks to the performance of the Parallel World Pharmacy and the Dispensing Pharmacy Guild, whose partners continue to grow. Apart from that, they have safer cosmetics and carry out regular health outreach to increase citizen awareness to prevent disease. Several ministers expressed that the performance of the Parallel World Pharmacy was truly astonishing. Soon after, Eleanor's students who could teach how to check for the plague were sent to Marseille to begin the quarantine plan. Seeing his father looking desperate, Falma assured him that they would be able to save people because he had prepared a drug called levofloxacin. This antibiotic was quite effective against the bacteria that caused the Black Death. For now, only Falma can make it, but he has asked partner pharmacies to prepare the needed doses. Their first mission is to prevent anyone from getting infected. However, because preventing disease outbreaks is not easy, Bruno goes to the palace with Eleanor and Falma. After listening to their explanation, the Empress instructed to partially close the gates leading to the imperial capital and tighten security on trade routes by setting up checkpoints. Shortly after, Falma begged the Queen for checkpoints to be set up in strategic locations. Shortly after, Falma reminded that if the bacteria infects the lungs, the transmission can be through the mouth and the droplets will spread faster. He prepared their wares, and merchants from overseas kept coming. Meanwhile, Solomon had gathered his members people and saw several rats crawling at his feet. As soon as they arrive at the port, Eleanor and Falma look at the sea, and they begin to realize the number of ships they have to inspect. With that, Falma did not waste any time, and he started the inspection method. Along with Eleanor, at the port they are welcomed by their two comrades, and they give Falma all the reports that they have gathered since the inspection started. Then Falma thanks the two for their efforts, and he immediately asks Eleanor to start doing their job too. As the inspection method continues, some of the sailor merchants are too impatient to undergo the lengthy process. Despite this, Falma and Eleanor continue doing their tasks. After the inspection, Falma gave the head physician of the ship a prescription for vitamin C to avoid scurvy. When they move to the next ship, the sailor merchant lashes out his anger at them. Soon after, the two sailor merchants start a commotion about who will undergo inspection first. Eleanor becomes furious due to their behavior and decides to use her divine arts. However, before she could even use it, a cannon was launched at the sea near the ships. It turns out that they are the Navy team from the Empire, and what shocks Falma is that their captain is no other than their regular customer, Jean the Old Geezer. Jean warns them that he will sink their ship if they are not willing to cooperate and follow the order from the Empire, and just like that, the tension subsides, and Falma continues their tasks. Soon after, they meet with Jean to thank him for his intervention. While they are expressing their worries and fear about the disease, Adam arrives to inform Falma about the incident in the nearby fishing village. Apparently, there are some ships that don't want to undergo the inspection process, and they use the village as a secret gateway. Moreover, there are people in the area who are experiencing symptoms of the feared disease. That said, Falma immediately decided to check the village to see what was happening. Before leaving, Falma boosts Eleanor's confidence because she has to continue the inspection, even if he is not around. Falma uses his wand to fly to the infected fishing village quickly. Along the way, the wand acts on its own accord and quickly brings Falma to his destination. Upon arrival, Falma saw that the villagers were exiting the village with a full understanding of contagious diseases. Falma stops them from exiting the village. However, the villagers don't want to follow his orders. Their fear has overcome their way of thinking, and they start suspecting Falma as an evil spirit. That said, they prepared to hurt with various stuff. But Falma has had enough of their crap, and he used his power to enclose the whole village with a thick layer of ice. The villagers are left dumbfounded after witnessing his power. When they shut their ugly, disgusting mouth, Falma explains to them that he comes to save them. He then shows his royal badge, and he successfully manages to calm them down. Soon after, Falma talks to the leaders of the village to show his plan. Apparently, he wants to segregate the people of the village based on the severity of the cases. He further explains that the precaution will be used for him to know the ones who need to be treated first, and those who don't need treatment at all. Elsewhere, the Royal Navy saw an approaching ship. One of his crew members tells him that the ship is not responding to their signals. Then he suspected that it could be the renegade ship that they had been looking for, which Jean confirmed. He then reads the flag signals of the ship that state they are experiencing an emergency and they need medical help. Jean then orders the fleet to draw closer to the ship, so they immediately surround it. After checking it, they found that all of the people that boarded it were dead. Jean knows the danger that the ship can bring, so he orders any of his men to go to the infected ship. Instead, he uses his common sense and immediate critical judgment, and he orders his men to sink the ship under the sea. Back at the fishing village, Falma manages to handle the situation, and the people thank him for his immediate emergency response. It turns out that he has already distributed the medicine that will help people fight the Black Death, and it was time for him to go to the place where people infected with Black Death were. Falma tells the village pharmacist that he will handle it alone, but one of them insists on helping him. Falma then explains that it's better for him to stay, and he goes straight to the isolated hospital. The scene then switches and shows two men named Jack and Ed, who are seen discussing that they don't have enough energy and time to do their job at a pharmacy school. Jack then had an idea for them to ask the principal to add more employees. At the same time, Professor Casper, a girl, came to see her. She seemed to know that Professor Casper was rudely rejected after trying to help two boys. So she went to Professor Casper to ask how she was. Professor Casper then said she would turn 60 next year and felt that it was normal that people would not want to be helped by a retiring old woman. Professor Casper added that her specialty is be retiring soon. In Esterk village, a medic wearing a head covering suddenly appears and bans him from entering because he thinks Falma is an ordinary boy. Shortly after, Falma explained that his purpose in coming there was to treat patients, so he was invited in by the medical staff. Falma, who saw the number of patients in that place, he had a hard time detecting which people were infected and which were not. He thought he could not cure them with his knowledge and the drug he concocted, levofloxacin. However, he kept pushing himself and tried his best. After that, Falma instructed medics to administer the drug to all patients. Meanwhile, he would examine each patient using his divine eye and found 12 patients had contracted the Black Death, while 2 others had not, and 1 had died. To treat the 12 infected, Professor Casper wonders who wrote about these microorganisms in detail. She was even more surprised because there was an inscription on Actinobacteria, the microorganism requested by Bruno, which turned out to have been developed many years ago. In Professor Casper's laboratory, Bruno sees the Actinobacteria she developed. However, she still doesn't believe that the microorganisms she developed can be used as new medicines. Not long after, Falma saw a puff of smoke coming from the crew of the smuggling boat, 2 carts laden with cloth, one with spices and another with rare white squirrels from Pant Island. From the smuggler's answer, discovered that the number of people who went to the imperial capital consisted of 24 workers and 5 holy knights, an army of suspects that it is another plot to destroy the empire by sending an even more vicious black plague. After telling everything, the smugglers finally got the promised drug. Meanwhile, Falma orders the medics to hand over the smugglers to the empire once they recover for legal trial. At the imperial palace, Bruno meets the queen to tell her about a report from Marseille about an illegal ship carrying disease in the village of Esterk, where the crew had disembarked. They spread a disease resembling the Black Plague and caused many fatalities. Since the crew's goal was to go to San Fleuve, would not enter. Meanwhile, the queen received a report about the Holy Knights from the Netherlands, who had attacked the city. She instructed the royal troops to defeat the 5 Holy Knights. At the time, Bruno reports about a Dutch smuggler ship possibly carrying the Black Plague, and asks the queen to take a new Black Plague medicine as a precaution. Bruno then explained that the pharmacist had discovered many new treatment methods, and was famous for his genius. At Gate 6, the royal soldiers looked overwhelmed by the Holy Knights until finally Solomon came and released the holy technique of the Holy Knights. Elsewhere, Charlotte was about to take medicines to the pharmacy, accomplish their task, and now the citizens would be safe. That it was safe. Meanwhile, Falma plans to go to the pharmacy to make medicine, but then he saw a black shadow over his pharmacy, so he rushed to the pharmacy. When Cedric came into the room, Camus suddenly paralyzed him.